Listen up, because there are three explosive situations brewing at Harless Hall that are about to shape the future of the Chicago Bears. A linebacker making millions might get cut, freeing up cap space that could completely reshape the roster. But this same guy missed the last 4 games when we needed him most. A third-round pick has just a few months to save their career or become another draft bust. And the bombshell, our best defensive back, just dropped a cryptic message that hints they might walk in free agency after dominating all season while playing out of position. Ryan Poles is backed into a corner with decisions that could shake the very foundation of this franchise. If you don't stick around till the end, you're going to miss the biggest stories of the off-season. First story, Tremaine Edmunds. Ryan Poles has a decision sitting on his desk that could completely flip the financial outlook of the Chicago Bears heading into 2026. And let me tell you, it's not an easy one. We're talking about Tremaine Edmunds, the linebacker we signed with so much hype. The guy who was supposed to be the anchor of our defense for years to come. But here's the hard truth nobody wants to face. Cutting him would free up around $15 million in cap space. Let me ask you this. When was the last time the Bears had a chance to clear that kind of money with just one move? That number isn't small change. With $15 million, you could go hard after an elite edge rusher in free agency. You could shore up the offensive line with 2 solid starters. Or you could lock in key players heading into contract years. That's real financial flexibility in a league where every dollar matters. But here's where it gets tricky. And this is what's been keeping me up at night. Edmunds isn't a bad player. In fact, it's the opposite. This guy is only 27, right in the middle of his athletic prime. And when he's healthy, he's exactly the kind of linebacker Dennis Allen needs to run his defense. The versatility Edmunds brings to this unit is not something you can just find on the open market. Think about it for a second. How many linebackers in this league can cover elite tight ends like Travis Kelce or Sam Laporta across the middle? How many have the speed and instincts to patrol the intermediate zones and still create turnovers? Edmunds had 4 interceptions in 2025. 4! That's not luck. That's a linebacker who understands the game, reads the quarterback, and is always in the right spot. I think people underestimate how rare it is to find a linebacker with that kind of coverage range. In today's NFL, where tight ends are basically giant wide receivers and running backs are constantly running routes, you need linebackers who can move. Edmunds can do that. He can run with tight ends, close gaps in the run game, and create chaos when you least expect it. But then comes the but. And it's a big one. Edmunds missed the last 4 games of the 2025 season with a groin injury. 4 games. Right when we were fighting for playoff positioning, our star linebacker was on the injury report. Let me ask you, can the Bears really afford to pay $17.4 million to a player who isn't available when it matters most? And here's the other reality Poles has to face. Linebacker just isn't a premium position in today's NFL economy. The teams winning Super Bowls aren't spending big money on linebackers. They're investing in pass rushers, elite corners, and offensive tackles who protect their franchise quarterbacks. As good as linebackers are, they're replaceable in the grand scheme of roster building. Look at what teams like the Niners, Chiefs, and Eagles are doing. None of them are paying top 5 money to their linebackers. They're finding value in the draft, developing young guys, and spending their money on positions that move the needle. I'm telling you right now, if Poles decides he needs that cap space to improve the pass rush or solidify the O-line, cutting Edmunds is the most obvious move. Now there is another option. Poles could restructure Edmunds' contract, push some money into future years, lower the immediate cap hit, and keep a player who clearly brings value to this defense. That's what teams like the Saints do all the time. But here's the issue. Poles isn't that kind of GM. He doesn't mortgage the future. He doesn't create long-term cap problems to fix short-term ones. Since arriving in Chicago, Ryan Poles has been methodical, disciplined, and focused on building this roster sustainably. Constantly restructuring contracts is how you end up in cap hell. It's how you end up unable to re-sign your own guys. It's how you end up rebuilding every 3 years. I think Poles would rather make the tough cut now than create a bigger mess later. And let's zoom out for a second. The Bears have major decisions to make this off-season. They've got to figure out what to do with guys like DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, and several defensive free agents. Every dollar matters. If Poles can free up $15 million by moving on from Edmonds and use that money to bring in 2 or 3 pieces that make the team better overall, isn't that the smarter move from a roster-building standpoint? But here's what keeps me up at night. What if we cut Edmonds and can't replace what he brings? Dennis Allen built his defensive scheme around Edmonds' versatility. That guy is the quarterback of the defense. He makes the calls, adjusts the coverages, puts everyone in position to succeed. Do we have anyone else on the roster who can do that? Let me ask you, do you trust that we can find a linebacker in the draft or free agency who can do what Edmonds does? Because I'm telling you, it's not as easy as it sounds. Sure, you can find linebackers who can tackle, you can find guys who can run, but finding one with Edmonds' instincts, football IQ, and versatility, that's rare. And don't forget the locker room factor. Edmonds has been a leader since day one. He's a true pro, a guy who works hard, prepares the right way, and sets the tone. When you cut a player like that, you're not just losing production. You're losing leadership, culture, and the kind of presence that helps young players grow. So here we are. Ryan Poles has to decide if $15 million in cap space is worth more than what Tremaine Edmonds brings to this defense. He has to decide if he can find better value elsewhere. He has to decide if he's willing to bet that he can replace Edmonds without the defense taking a major step back. I think this is one of those decisions that defines an off-season. If Poles cuts Edmonds and uses that money wisely, if he brings in pieces that truly improve the team, then it'll be seen as a brilliant move. But if he cuts Edmonds, can't replace him, and the defense struggles, then he's going to get roasted by the fans and the media. The pressure's on Poles, the decision's on his desk, and in the coming weeks, we're going to find out if Tremaine Edmonds is still part of the Bears' future, or if he becomes a cap casualty. One way or another, this decision is going to have massive consequences for this organization. Second story, Kiran Amegadjie. Now let's talk about a player who's literally hanging by a thread in this organization. A tackle drafted in the 3rd round just 2 years ago and already staring down the barrel of being cut. We're talking about Kiran Amegadjie, and let me be brutally honest with you, this off-season is probably his last shot to prove he belongs on an NFL roster. Think about this for a second. Amegadjie has played in 6 games in 2 years. 6! And all of those came during his rookie season. In 2025, the guy didn't even touch the field. 0 snaps, 0 contribution. For a 3rd-round pick, that's absolutely unacceptable. Let me ask you, how many 3rd-rounders survive when they can't even get on the field in their first 2 seasons? Here's the reality. Amegadjie came to Chicago with expectations. He was a tackle out of Yale, a guy with academic pedigree, solid technique, and the kind of fundamentals that were supposed to translate to the NFL. Ryan Poles drafted him thinking he could develop into the left tackle of the future, someone who could eventually replace Braxton Jones or at least push him for the job. But from the moment he arrived, it's been downhill. In his rookie year, Amegadjie barely saw the field, and when he did, he didn't impress anyone. The hope was that with a full off-season of work and a year in the system, he'd take a leap in 2025. But then training camp came around, and it became painfully obvious that Amegadjie wasn't even close to ready. First, he hurt his leg and missed the first preseason game. Not a great start. Then he came back for the second preseason game. But here's what killed me. He was running with the 3rd-team offense. 3rd team. A 3rd-round pick in year 2 should not be buried that deep on the depth chart. That tells you everything you need to know. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, they moved him to right tackle. Why? Because clearly he couldn't hang on the left side. So the coaches said, all right, maybe he can be a right tackle. But even there, he couldn't stand out. I'm telling you right now, when a team starts moving a tackle from one side to the other just to see where he might fit, that's a panic move. But wait, it gets worse. Despite his mediocre play, the Bears kept him on the 53-man roster. Why? Because Ryan Poles still had this vision that maybe, just maybe, Amegadjie could play guard. Yeah, you heard that right. A tackle who can't play tackle, so let's try him at guard. That's basically admitting the tackle experiment failed. And then, like fate wanted to slam the door shut, Amegadjie injured his elbow and landed on injured reserve. Season over before it even started. 2 years in the league, and this guy has spent more time in the training room than on the practice field. Now here's the brutal truth Amegadjie has to face. Ben Johnson didn't draft him. This new coaching staff owes him nothing. They have no loyalty to him, no reason to give him extra chances or be patient with his development. If Amegadjie doesn't show up to training camp in 2026 and absolutely dominate, it's over. Let me ask you, why should the Bears keep investing in Amegadjie when they've got Theo Benedett, an undrafted free agent who already showed more in 1 season than Amegadjie has in 2? Benedett took over the starting job in week 4 when Braxton Jones was struggling. Yeah, Benedett's raw. Yeah, he's got issues in pass protection. He graded out at 54.9 on PFF. But at least he's on the field. At least he's contributing. For an undrafted guy, what Benedett did in 2025 was impressive. He showed aggression. He showed potential. He showed he can be developed. The Bears know they've got something there. They can work with that. They can build on that. Meanwhile, what do they have with Amegadjie? A tackle who can't stay healthy, who got leapfrogged on the depth chart, who couldn't even compete for a job. Now there is one possible lifeline for Amegadjie. Guard! If the Bears really want to try converting him to guard, that might give him a shot to make the roster. But think about the competition. They've got Luke Newman, a rookie who played in 9 games in 2025. They've got Jordan McFadden, who spent most of the season on the practice squad, but made his first start in the playoffs against the Rams. And let's talk about McFadden for a second, because this matters. The guy wasn't great in run blocking, 57.9 on PFF, but in pass protection, he was solid with a 75.7. For someone who was on the practice squad, that's promising. McFadden is a restricted free agent this offseason. Free. But everyone expects him back to compete. That's another guy fighting for a spot Amegadjie might want. So here's the million-dollar question. Can Amegadjie really compete with these guys? I think the odds are stacked against him. The deck is completely loaded. He's got 2 years of zero production. He's got an injury history. He's got a new coaching staff with no ties to him. He's got competition from players who've already shown more than he has. But here's the thing. The ball's in his court. If Amegadjie shows up to training camp in the best shape of his life, if he dominates in practice, if he finally shows he understands what it takes to play in the NFL, he could force the Bears to make a tough call. He could make it impossible to cut him. I'm telling you, I've seen players in similar situations turn their careers around. I've seen guys on the verge of being cut become solid starters because something finally clicked. But those stories are rare. Most of the time, when a player shows this little in their first 2 years, there's no coming back. And here's the other reality. The Bears have bigger needs. They've got to figure out the long-term plan at left tackle, especially with Ozzy Trapilio coming off a patella tendon injury. They've got to decide what to do with Braxton Jones. They've got to strengthen the interior of the offensive line. Do they really have the time and resources to keep developing a third-round tackle who hasn't shown anything? I think if Amegadjie doesn't have a lights-out training camp, his time in Chicago is done. The Bears will cut him, try to sneak him onto the practice squad if he clears waivers, and move on. They can't afford to hold a roster spot for a project that's not progressing. So here we are. Kiran Amegadjie has about 4 months to get ready for the biggest moment of his career. He's got to show up to training camp ready to compete like never before. He's got to show versatility, stay healthy, and prove he belongs on this roster. Let me ask you, do you think he can do it? Do you think Amegadjie has what it takes to turn this around? Because I'm telling you, if he doesn't, if he has another mediocre camp, if he gets hurt again, if he just can't compete at the level required, then he's just another third-round pick that didn't pan out. And in the NFL, that happens more often than people think. Third story, CJ Gardner-Johnson. And now we get to the story that's got the entire Chicago fan base in full-on panic mode. We're talking about CJ Gardner-Johnson, the defensive back Ryan Poles brought in mid-season, who instantly became one of the most important pieces on this defense. The guy who helped carry us into the playoffs. The guy who played out of position and still balled out. And now, after dropping a cryptic post on social media, everyone's asking the same question. Is he staying or is he gone? Let me read you exactly what he posted. Too chill for the runaround. 6 words. 6 words that have sparked more speculation than anything else this off-season. Let me ask you, what does that mean? Is he talking about the Bears? Is it about contract talks? Is it something personal we don't know about? Here's what we do know. Gardner-Johnson is a free agent. He can sign with any team he wants. And after the season he just had in Chicago, he's going to have multiple offers. This guy isn't just some average player. He's not a role guy. He's a difference maker. He's the kind of player who changes the DNA of a defense. Think about what Gardner-Johnson did for us. He came to Chicago after the Texans cut him just 3 games into the season. He walked into a secondary that was absolutely decimated by injuries. Jalen Johnson, our CB1, missed time. Kyler Gordon, our nickel corner, was out. The secondary was in full-blown crisis mode. And Gardner-Johnson showed up and said, "I got this." But here's the crazy part. Gardner-Johnson has been a safety his entire career. His entire career. And the Bears told him, "Hey, we need you to play nickel corner." And you know what he did? He didn't complain. No drama. No excuses. He just strapped on the helmet and played out of position because the team needed him. And not only did he play, he dominated. In 10 games with the Bears, Gardner-Johnson racked up 51 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 5 QB hits, 4 pass breakups, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Read those stats again. A defensive back with 3 sacks. A guy playing nickel corner who's getting pressure on the quarterback. That's elite. I'm telling you right now, finding a DB who can do everything Gardner-Johnson does is damn near impossible. He can cover slot receivers. He can blitz. He can support the run. He can force turnovers. He's exactly the kind of versatile player modern defenses are built around. And here's the context that makes this even more critical. The Bears are already losing multiple pieces in the secondary to free agency. Kevin Byard, the veteran safety we brought in to stabilize the back end, is a free agent. Jaquan Brisker, who's dealt with multiple concussions, has an uncertain future. The secondary could look completely different in 2026. So can the Bears really afford to lose Gardner-Johnson too? I don't think so. This guy proved in just 10 games that he's exactly what this defense needs. He proved he can lead. He proved he can play multiple roles. He proved he can produce in big moments. But here's the issue. Gardner-Johnson has already played for 5 different teams before landing in Chicago. 5. He's been with New Orleans, Philly, Detroit, Houston, and now the Bears. Clearly, he's looking for stability. He wants a place where he can settle in, build something long-term, and be appreciated and paid accordingly. Let me ask you, can the Bears give him that? Do they have the cap space to make a competitive offer? Are they willing to commit to him long-term? Because if they're not, if they're thinking about offering a 1-year deal or something lowball, then that cryptic post might be his way of saying, "I'm not here for the games." And think about it from Gardner-Johnson's perspective. The guy just had an incredible season playing out of position. He helped lead the Bears to the playoffs. He was one of the biggest reasons this defense turned things around in the second half of the year. Doesn't he deserve to be paid like one of the top DBs in free agency? But here's the reality of the salary cap. The Bears have tough choices to make. We already talked about Tremaine Edmonds and the $15 million they could free up by cutting him. They've got to figure out what to do with other high-priced players. They need room to sign their draft class. They need flexibility to upgrade multiple spots on the roster. So where does Gardner-Johnson fit into those priorities? I think he has to be a priority. You can't let a player of his caliber walk without a fight. You can't let another team swoop in and grab him after you just saw what he can do in your system. But here's what worries me. That post. Too chill for the runaround. That sounds like someone who's frustrated. That sounds like someone who's not getting the answers they want in negotiations. That sounds like someone who might seriously be looking elsewhere. I'm telling you, if the Bears lose Gardner-Johnson because they didn't want to pay him what he's worth, that would be a massive mistake. This guy showed in 10 games that he's the solution to multiple problems in the secondary. He showed he's worth every dollar he's going to ask for. And think about the alternatives. If Gardner-Johnson walks, who do you bring in to replace him? The free agent market for DBs is always expensive. The good ones go fast. Teams overpay constantly for secondary help because it's a critical need in today's NFL. Do you really want to be scrambling to find a replacement when you already have the perfect guy in-house? I think Ryan Poles knows this. I think he understands how valuable Gardner-Johnson is to this defense. I think he's going to do everything he can to keep him. But the question is, will it be enough? Can Poles offer the kind of deal Gardner-Johnson is going to get on the open market? And here's the other thing. Gardner-Johnson clearly wants stability. He's bounced around 5 teams. He's tired of moving, tired of learning new systems, tired of starting over every year. Chicago could give him that. A long-term home, a defined role, a chance to be part of something special that's being built here. But if that post means what a lot of people think it means, if Gardner-Johnson is frustrated with how things are going, then the Bears have a problem. They need to act fast. They need to show him he's a priority. They need to make him an offer he can't walk away from. Let me ask you, what would you do if you were Ryan Poles? Would you pay Gardner-Johnson what he's asking for? Or would you let him walk and use that money elsewhere? Because I'm telling you, losing a player like him after what he did in just 10 games would be devastating for this defense. We need answers. We need to know what that post really means. We need to know if Gardner-Johnson is seriously thinking about leaving, or if it's something totally unrelated to the Bears. But until we get those answers, the fan base is going to stay in panic mode. And honestly, I don't blame them. So there you have it. 3 stories that are going to define the Chicago Bears offseason. Tremaine Edmunds and the $15 million decision. Kiran Amegadjie fighting for his NFL life. CJ Gardner-Johnson and that cryptic message that's got everyone on edge. Let me ask you, should the Bears cut Edmunds to free up cap space? Or is he too valuable to let go? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about that defensive move. And what about Amegadjie? Do you think he deserves one last shot? Or is it time for the Bears to move on and invest in other tackles? I want to know if you still believe he can turn it around. And the biggest question of all, what does Gardner-Johnson's post really mean? Is he staying or leaving? Should the Bears do whatever it takes to keep him? That's the conversation we need to have right now in the comments. Look, I know this offseason is going to be intense. I know there are going to be tough decisions. I know not everyone's going to agree with what Ryan Poles decides to do. But that's exactly why we need to stick together as a community. We need to talk this stuff out. We need to share our takes. We need to be the voice of Chicago Bears fans. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, what are you waiting for? This is your home for Bears news. This is where we're going to break down every move, every decision, every rumor about this team. We're a family here. We're Bears fans who live and breathe navy and orange. Smash that like button if you want Gardner-Johnson to stay. Share this with other Bears fans who need to hear what's going on. And turn on notifications, because I promise you, there are more explosive stories coming in the next few days. This is just the beginning of the off-season. The decisions Ryan Poles makes in the next few weeks will determine whether we finally take that leap or stay stuck as a team full of potential. I'll be here covering every step of the way. The question is, are you going to be here with me? Bear down Chicago. I'll see you in the next video.